Well, welcome to the afternoon session of GPPS Forum, of the first day of GPPS Forum 2019. We will start this afternoon session with a switch of subjects. We're talking about power, and now we're talking about propulsion. And in my introductory remarks, I already hinted at the fact that we will not just talk about future vision for aircraft technology and things like that academics indulge in, but we'll get down to real-life aero-engines and talk about the maintenance, repair, and overhaul. It is therefore my pleasure to be able to introduce to you the head of engineering of MTU Maintenance, an independent MRO provider located by chance in my university's hometown in Hanover, Germany. Friedhelm Kappei got his PhD in aircraft propulsion systems at the University of Stuttgart. He later worked with Fairchild Dornier, and he joined MTU Aero-Engines. I have to look this up, in 2005. In 2005, he started working as a development engineer in aero development and held various positions in the new aero engine design until in 2013 he took over the engineering of the maintenance business of MTU. And that is the capacity in which we invited him and asked him to speak here, and I'm very glad that he agreed to do that. So it's your podium.
Thank you very much, Professor Sollmann, for the kind introduction. Thanks for having me here, this great venue. I now have a challenge to have the first keynote after lunch. I hope I can entertain everybody enough. I'd like to talk about strategic choices in aero-engine maintenance. What are the trends in maintenance for aero-engines? What's our vision? What's our outlook? And I'll be on the panel later on, so if you have any further questions, we can also discuss on the panel then. So for those who probably are not familiar with MTU maintenance, we're part of the MTU Aero-Engines group. And those who do not know MTU Aero-Engines, we're basically the biggest engine manufacturer in Germany. We have about 10,000 employees worldwide, different sites. We do a lot of engineering development with our OEM partners like GE and Pratt, or in other companies in the military business. And we create or generate a revenue of about 5 billion per year. So coming back to the maintenance branch, which is a very important branch of MTU Aero-Engines, we are, as Professor Sollmann already mentioned, an independent shop on the one side. We also are connected to OEM network. The maintenance of MTU employs about 5,000 people worldwide. We have sites in Canada, Zhuhai, China. We also built one in Poland and 2 sites in Germany, Berlin and Hanover. And Hanover is the headquarters, more or less. We do about 1,000 shop visits per year in all these locations. 1,000 shops visit means 1,000 engines go through our shop. And we can service different variants, about 30 engine types can go through our MRO facilities. Now, if we want to talk about MRO in engine, we need to look first at the commercial aviation. So if you look at the numbers, by air transport, about 4 billion passengers per year travel by aircraft. And they're being transported by around 26,000 aircrafts carrying 55,000 engines. And the total revenue in commercial aviation MRO is $75 billion. So these numbers are quite impressive, especially if you look at the growth rate that we forecast for the next 10 years per year, which is an average about 4%. That's very good compared to other industries. Now we want to talk about engines. So let's go to the engine side. The engine is by far the most complex and valuable asset on an aircraft. And so the MRO is the biggest chunk of the commercial MRO market. It's about 42%, which is only related to engine MRO. Means around 8,000 engines per year worldwide go through shops and create a big revenue. So the engine MRO sector by far is a very interesting and important market in terms of maintenance. If we want to talk about business models and strategies, it's important to understand the business model of the engine maker, of the OEM. And I think everybody has seen this curve. It basically applies to investment on most assets like gas turbines as well. You have, when you want to introduce a new product, the investment in technology and R&D, so you invest a lot of money to get finally to the entry into service. And then you have to still invest to ramp up production, get the aftermarket running, and eventually, after several years in service, you get a return on your invest. So this curve applies to all engine programs, basically. And as you can see, in order to get your cash back for new investments, new developments, it's important to understand how to get money out of the aftermarket business. So that's why the OEM is very keen on getting control of the aftermarket, because it's very important for his return on invest. Now, if you want to talk about changes in the MRO business, I think it's valuable to look into history and to see how the product changed over the last years, or decades, I would say, talking about decades in engine business. In the past, we had engines which had a lot of shop visits, old technology, but with every engine that has been introduced over the last decades, technology improved. And with improved technology, the engines require less shop visits. These points and dots represent shop visits. So reduced shop visits basically means you have less events to get cash back, which means to get less events to get to the right part of that curve. And besides that, with the new technology, we've recognized that the customers, so the airlines, they always want to have latest technology. They want to have more efficient engines. They don't fly engines to the very end. So, in fact, that means they rather like to change to new engines before 30 years are on. So that means basically, apart from not only having less shop visits, you only have less time to get cash back. So that's very important to understand, that the OEM really has a big pressure to get money back for his investments. I was talking about OEM very much, so I think it's important to understand the business model and the players that are on the field. We, of course, have, on the one hand side, the OEM. He wants to get payback on investments. He wants to have an improved operation, no hassle in operation. He can basically bring in best technical know-how, of course, on the product, and he can therefore give good warranties. The second player are airline shops and MRO, like Lufthansa, for instance. They focus on the support of their parent company, parent airline. They are driven to reduce costs to support the parent airline. They probably have the best look on the operation of the engine because they operate it. And then third, we have the independents. The independent MRO shops, which are not connected to an OEM and they're not connected to an airline. They try to distinguish or differentiate from the other players by providing very customized solutions, be very customer-oriented, probably invent alternative repairs, provide service and use parts to drive down the cost for the customers. So we have these three players on the field. How did they or how do they get along? In the past, there was a kind of, I would say, competitive coexistence. Everybody had a stake. And the OEM was there. The OEM share was about 5 to 10%, very low. They made good money by selling the engines. With today's engines, like I would say a V2500, for instance, or CFM, the OEM share on the aftermarket has increased tremendously. We already have 50 to 60% of the market captured by OEM shops, by OEM network. Now thinking further ahead, looking at the latest products that have been introduced, this will further increase. In future, we will see that 80% of the market is captured and controlled by the OEM. As an independent, you may look at other products, or you may kind of join the network, or you can join an airline. But most of the aftermarket services are being provided by the OEM network. That's our vision. What does that mean? Let's look a bit more in details. Past engines, I picked a CFM-3, old engine. It was fairly easy to get access to the market. It was fairly easy to get a license for repair, a license for the overhaul. It was easy and cheap to get the equipment, to get into the business, basically. And you had a big variety of shops providing services for this engine. Big market for repairs, big market for the MRO services. Competition, basically. Today's engine, V2500, for instance, CFM-5 or -7, current engines, basically, we already have growing barriers. That relates to the 50 to 60% market share of the OEM. It is more difficult to provide alternative repairs because the OEM tries to build barriers for, we call it DER repairs, alternative repairs. And it's a lot more expensive or difficult to get a license for being a shop. Future, with the latest products, like a Leap, for instance, it's nearly impossible as an independent to get into that market. It's nearly impossible to get a license. And it's very expensive. And then for the repairs, for instance, there, from our perspective, will be a kind of bidding process, but only if you're inside the network. If you're outside the network, you cannot provide any repairs. That changes business. So what can we do? What's the answer? What kind of strategy can we do? Well, we could certainly continue and look into the independent market, but then we would need to focus on mature and sunset engines. And those engines, at some point, the business will go down, that's for sure. We can team up with the OEM, being a risk-sharing partner, for instance, for new products. Then we could become network partner. Or we increase our partnership with airlines, lessors, because airlines and lessors, they have a good leverage on the OEM. Because they have a huge fleet that gives good leverage. So we have basically 3 strategies that we can follow to stay in business. So what's MTU doing? And I think for that, it's very important to understand the portfolio of our business in MTU. This is a portfolio of our engines we service in MRO throughout all our shops in 2018. And you see the blue dots or circles, they represent engines that we focus on, which are important for our shops, which we service. Leave out the gray ones. We don't service trend engines anyway. And the light blue ones are those engines where we're not connected to any network. We are an independent service provider. So if you look at that, you could think, well, no worries. We still have another engine. There's a lot of business. We don't need to care about the network stuff anyhow. But we already have some engines that we service inside the network. The GP7000, for instance, which is the engine for the A380. The GEnx, and on the very left, the new programs that emerged that had just been introduced to the market. So let's jump 10 years ahead. It's a long-term business. 2028, the whole landscape will have changed. All the engines that have been on the left-hand side before now are on the sunset market. And the other that have emerged in 2018, 15, they now become the biggest chunk of the business. So, for instance, the PW1100 gear turbofan that we just introduced with Pratt, Leap, and we have to react on that. We have to change the way we work, the way we are set up as a company, because this will be the future. All the network engines. What does that mean in terms of how we are set up as a company? I compare independent OEM network working life, basically. In independent, we have a direct contact to the customer, to the airline. We are basically the face to the customer. We sell our services, we do marketing for ourselves. In an OEM network, this has only been handled by the OEM, so we are out. We basically simply get engines. Brings me to the next point. We get engines with a work scope, so we only do the work scope. We're not doing any additional service. Whereas on the independent market, we have very highly skilled people that are trying to provide the best work scope for our customer. We provide very customized solutions. We optimize our disassembly and assembly and testing. It's called DAT. This will change. We may streamline or make our DAT line, production line lean to optimize costs. Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's only controlled by the OEM. Material management also is only controlled by the OEM. Full logistics been handled by the OEM. No used parts that we could bring in. Whereas now with independent, we making great effort to use teardown engines to provide our customers with cheap serviceable used parts. Repairs. For us, repair in independent business is a big issue because it's something we can differentiate from other MRO shops. So we invent a lot of DER repairs, alternative repairs to the OEM in our independent business. This will not be the case in the network. In the network, we will, through a bidding process, be able to do repairs, probably propose repairs to the OEM because we see the hardware, but we will not develop repairs for parts which are not our design responsibility. Like if we are part of a risk sharing or of a program, we will only do repairs for our parts. Now we do repairs for other parts as well. And then last but not least, services. We offer a broad band of services like fleet management, trend monitoring, asset management. This will be handled by the OEM. So our landscape of things we do will change. So what's our strategy? How do we react? Basically, simply speaking, we try to play on all three parties. We still try to be independent wherever possible. I think there are a lot of engines still that will run next 15 years, 20 years where we can make good money. But we need to get the biggest chunk of that independent market. We will cooperate with the OEMs, of course, like we do with Pratt, like we do with GE, on new products to become network partner. And we do form partnerships with airlines or lessors. We're partnering since more than a decade with China Southern Airlines very successfully, and that's also our future. So basically, we try to follow all three strategies. We're not focusing on one strategy only. We need to adapt our portfolio, of course. We need to check which markets are lucrative, which of the sunset engines are lucrative, where do we invest also as a risk-sharing partner, and we try to streamline our value stream in production. Participating in key markets, I think that's clear. We need to see which markets are the right ones for investment, also for building up new sites, as we just do. Well, and increasing competitiveness, I think that's clear. That's not only a focus for independent shops, it also is especially a focus on network shops, where you have to provide best cost. You have to streamline your production, see where you can get basically best cost for your work. So what's the takeaway then? Well, the takeaway from my perspective is we are really, I mean, engine MRO is a very interesting and competitive market. It's very much changing now with the network of the OEM, long-term service agreements that the OEM offers, which is changing the industry and the business cases. And I think every shop, especially the independent shops, really need to revise their strategy and look where they can find sweet spot or need spot in that market. From our perspective, with this threefold strategy, we are very well set up for this change in the business because we have strong partnerships with airlines and the OEM, and because we have very highly skilled personnel in our engineering department. So I hope this is kind of opener for the upcoming panel now, for the strategies in the future. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open for questions later on the panel. Thank you very much.
Welcome.